Hello, my friends, and welcome to Fuel Forward with Vivian Blade, where I share power-packed pointers to fuel your career forward. I'm an author, and I run a speaking, training, and coaching business focused on helping professionals achieve career success. I answer questions on career challenges and barriers that are keeping you from achieving your vision of success. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for carving some time out of your evening, your precious time, to spend with me to invest in yourself and in your career. So we're going to be busy this afternoon, as you see a lot of things in front of you, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. To get us started, I'd like for each of you to stand where you are. Stand where you are. And are you familiar with the power pose? Give me your Wonder Woman power pose. All right, Amy Cuddy, who is a Harvard professor, talked about... There we go. How the way we stand can help us to feel more powerful. And I want you to repeat this after me. We are women empowered, changing the game for advancing our careers and making the community we live in a better place. Give yourselves a hand. Pat your neighbor on the back and say, we are empowered. All right. Great. And with that, you may have a seat. All right. You just put yourself in the driver's seat, ready to go as women empowered. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how we can change the game for advancing our careers. And thinking about the topic of games, one of the favorite times that I have with my family and friends is when we have game night. Anybody else like game night? Yeah. So some of you who may know my family, because we are clients here, my husband over there, my daughter Olivia, myself there, grinning in the bottom. We like to take selfies. My daughter-in-law, Denitza, and my son Percy, and my niece Tiffany. So we are usually playing together, and Tiffany's mom and dad are usually playing with us. And one of the games that we love to play, we usually team up playing the game Family Feud. Anybody like Family Feud? And so it's one of our favorites, and it's always so interesting because we'll team up, divide into teams. Percy is often playing Steve Harvey, the host, and gives us some great questions. But we're usually playing by our own set of rules. Each team is sort of playing by a different set of rules that we make up on our own oftentimes. So you know how the rules go to Family Feud. You can't have other people helping you give the answers. Okay, we have people who are helping each other give the answers. Or you give an answer that may be kind of close to what the audience said, but not quite so close to what the survey said, and they want it to count anyway. Anybody ever play like that? Yeah. So we're bending our rules and playing by our own rules, but that makes it fun and challenging for us. But also, we want to think about other games that we play. Have you seen the movie Game Night? Okay, so you know how that movie goes and how suspenseful that movie was. So the plot starts out very different than it ends up. So Max and Annie, they like to have friends coming over to have game night at their home. And so Max's brother Brooks comes back into the picture eventually and challenges them to a mystery game. And so as they get into playing this game with their friends, they quickly realize that the rules are different than they thought. It actually started out as a game, but ended up as a real mystery to be solved. So I won't give away the rest of the story in case you haven't seen it, but it is a fun movie to watch. My son, in fact, said, and I think I was traveling, and on the plane, maybe going to Asia, needing to watch a movie. So I was asking them, what movie should I watch? So he recommended Game Night, knowing that I am not a person who likes a lot of suspense and scary stuff. So they got me on that one, but it is a very fun movie to watch. But how you play the game directly impacts your outcome. And sometimes the rules of the game that we think we're playing may be actually different from how the rules actually work. And so what I find is that oftentimes professionals really aren't sure or aren't aware of how they should be engaging as they are going across the journey in their careers. So today is going to be a lot about self-discovery and really understanding and answering the questions around how am I going to get there? How do I go about achieving the career and the dreams that I have set out for myself in my life? So we're going to be talking a lot about what are some of the strategies that you can use and what are the rules of the game that you may not necessarily be aware of. The other thing I want you to really think a lot about is your mindset around your career and around your goals in your life. If you can think about your career and the jobs that you have as more than just a job, as really a way that in your life you receive value, you give value, and it is not just a means to an end to what we want in life, but it is a journey that we go across that has meaning along the way and that we add meaning along the way. Know that no two people's career is going to be exactly the same, and that's okay. We all have different goals. We all have a different purpose in life. My mother would always say, you have a purpose. You were born for a purpose. And we want to be able to understand what that is and to ultimately fulfill that purpose of our lives. So it's not just about gaining what we can in life. It's not just about playing the game to play the game. It really is just about building relationships, adding value, achieving the dreams and the goals that we have for our lives and those around us and those that we influence, and to be a positive influence to others. You also may think about where you are in your career and whether or not you want to really progress, move up the corporate ladder, so to speak, or lattice these days, so to speak. Or maybe you are happy with where you are, but want to be more challenged in your career and the types of things that you might want to do in your career. And that's okay. Maybe you are a leader who can influence how things work in your organization, that you create an environment that is conducive to using the strategies that we're going to learn and that we're going to talk about today. That's a more comfortable place that as we really are thinking about and working on moving ahead in our career, moving it in the direction where we want to go, that using these strategies is comfortable and that more than just us in this room are also aware of it. So our focus today is going to be around really how we, especially as women, can stop giving away control of our career. Oftentimes we are so focused on the work, and we'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily, but we're so focused just on keeping our head down that we are giving away control and believe that it is somebody else's responsibility to manage our career. You'll have a system that is going to help you to break through so that you can accelerate your progress as you define it for your career, as you define those goals and that progress as you want it. And what are those strategies that are going to give me the greatest impact in the shortest amount of time, again, so that I can accelerate my progress? I want you to stand again for just a moment. All right, we're going to move. We're going to be busy this afternoon, so stand again for just a moment. And I want you to think about for just a minute, what are the things that you most want for yourself in your life? Okay, what is most important to you? And I want you to reach. How high can you reach? So reach up. Take both hands and reach up. Okay, okay. Some of you more so than us is on. All right. But what it takes for us to get there is to reach for it. Things are not going to necessarily be easy, are they? And knowing that we've got to have the tenacity sometimes and the perseverance to make it work. But we are, as we said earlier, women empowered. You may take your hands down. Well, we are women empowered. And I want you to think about, as we go through the course of our time together today, how am I going to reach? How can I make sure that I reach as high as I can to achieve what's important to me and what I give back in my work, as well as what I want to achieve within my life? Okay? All right, you may have a seat. To help us on our journey today, you have a few tools in front of you. So you have the book that was mentioned earlier, and I'm going to be referencing some areas. You'll see some footnotes at the bottom of the slide, a little fuel can. I'll point that out to you a little bit later. That gives you the fuel to help you to fuel forward. So you may want to flag. You've got some flags at your space. You've got some highlighters, so feel free. This is your book. Feel free to use it as a resource. Make notes. You've got Post-it notes as well if you want to make some notes on some things. You also have a Fuel Forward Career Success Reference Guide that has some information in here. And we're also going to be working with this a little bit, so you'll follow along with that. And then a couple of other things to complete. One is the video release form, so if you will, make sure that you turn that in, complete that, sign that, and turn that in. You can leave it at your space, or maybe we'll pass those down as you have those done, so that we have those. The video are used for my purposes to help promote what I do, so people can get a flavor for my work, some of the things that I do. Also, I would appreciate your feedback on this particular card. As we go along, you'll also get a few other worksheets that go along with the Fuel Forward resources, and we'll talk more about those as we go along. As I had you think just a minute ago about what you most want to achieve, what's important for you in your life, I want you to think about that in the context of your career very specifically. And what are the primary career goals that you have for yourself within the next 2 years? So take just a second to think about that. And I want you to write that down. Find a space. You can take a space here at the bottom of your paper to write that down. Also, one of the other worksheets or resources that you have is the Fuel Forward Career Planning Worksheet. So this will give you the opportunity to really think a little more strategically, come back and give that a little bit more thought about what do I want to do going forward in my career. And as I think about those roles, what are some of the key competencies and skills I need? What are some of the experiences that I need that will help you to think about how to navigate around the course of your career? Where do I need to go? So you can take some time a little bit later to think more specifically about that particular question. Now, as you think about what your primary career goal within the next 2 years is, how confident are you that the current approach that you're using to manage your career will actually help you to achieve that? Okay, I just want you to internalize and think about that question. And again, what I often find is that people aren't doing a great job of managing their career. They're not as focused on it, and they have questions around, I'm not sure exactly what I should be even doing. That's the biggest question I most frequently get. And know that what got you to this point are not going to be the same tools and strategies that are going to help you to get to where you want to go in your next role and even beyond. So What I encourage you to do is stop giving away control of your career, waiting for someone else to manage it for you. Another misperception that I often hear is that, well, my boss sees me working hard and I'm doing a good job, I'm getting good feedback. HR, they have performance reviews and we have review periods, and so I know they're thinking about what I'm going to be doing next. And that is one of the biggest misperceptions that we have. So stop giving away control of your career and take the driver's seat. Be women empowered in our career. I want to share with you some of the feedback that you provided on the Fuel Forward Career Practices Assessment so that you can see what some of your collective responses looked like. And so as we think about your career advancement and taking control of that, how do you currently feel about whether your career advancement is a shared responsibility between your manager, the company, and yourself? And however, you have primary responsibility for your career. So almost 90% either strongly agree or agree with that statement. So that's good. So you're taking primary responsibility or believe that we have that. Again, what you'll see a little bit later is what are some of the levers that I use in that I may not be as familiar with. And you'll see a little bit later where we still have some of those questions. Have you given careful thought to the path that you'd like to take in your career? And so almost 82% strongly agree or agree with that. So many of us are thinking about that, taking careful consideration periodically about what it is we want to do. And we have to be very clear in our own minds about what it is we want to do in our careers so we can communicate that and so that other people can help us. As if we don't, then other people don't know how to help us. They don't know what to do or what we're interested in. I often find that there are a number of frustrations that in the day-to-day course of work and managing our careers that professional women often have. And I want to explore with you what some of the greatest frustrations you may have around being able to advance and manage your career. You have some Post-it notes and you have some ink pens at your spot. So if you'll grab a Post-it note and brainstorm with yourself just what are some of those frustrations. And if you can pass those down, I'm going to ask the people who are on the end to work as carriers here. And if you will, once everyone passes those down, just post them up here on the flip chart for us. Great. Good. You've got a great list of things up here. So that's awesome. If you can hear my voice, clap once. You can hear my voice, clap twice. And 3 times. All right. Thank you very much. So you came up with a lot of frustration. So unfortunately, we would love for everything to go perfectly in the way we want it all the time, but we know the reality is because people are people. We are human, and so there are going to be some frustrations that we experience. No, that's okay. I'm just going to read off a few of these, and if anyone wants to elaborate on anything specifically, sorry about that, that's fine. Let's see. So family versus career, mixed messages from coworkers, motivating people who won't motivate themselves to move teams and everyone forward, no clear path, no place to advance to, trying to counsel someone about new ideas, attitudes, unclear focus or vision for the department, lack of voice in decisions or about my role, so focused on appropriately staffing that I can't focus on growth. Okay, so sometimes we often do get caught up in the moment and the work that has to be done right now. I'm not sure of the next steps, how to get there. I'm not aggressive enough to speak up about what I want. Is there room on a small team to grow? Need a mentor, finding a good mentor, assuring successes we are acknowledged without seeming to brag. Taking on other responsibilities, not having enough time to complete my own. Lack of trust, oftentimes. Lack of mentorship. too busy with today's task to spend time on tomorrow's goals, lack of guidance on next steps to advancing careers, others not doing their share, feeling incapable, not a clear path to the next level. I've seen lack of mentorship a lot, being afraid to speak up, overcomplicating things, more detail than needed, not being able to prioritize properly, lack of clarity on opportunities and what those are. If I do advance, not clear on how my role would change, if at all, being misunderstood. So there are a number of things that we experience, and sometimes we feel like we are alone and that we're by ourselves. So one thing, it's good to know that you have a collective set of sisters here who are experiencing some of the same things and who have some of the same desires. And I run into many professionals too who also experience a lot of frustrations. And my goal for you is that through the strategies we learn here today, that you'll be able to manage through a lot of those frustrations and to move ahead as you desire and you deserve. The mistake that holds us back so much, I want to look at that. We've talked about it briefly already, but really that keeping our head down, working so hard, so we saw that as a frustration. Sometimes we feel like we don't have the time because we really are stretched thin with everything that there is to do. And so while we do that, though, we are frustrated and we feel like, I don't have enough time in the day to do everything I need to do, let alone work on my career. But there are some consequences to both not proactively managing our career as well as oftentimes the culture that we work in with just the history of working women and our advancement opportunities in the workplace. A study by McKinsey & Company and leanin.org, and this is their 2018 study, found that women still don't have the same opportunities to advance as men do. And this is not men bashing or anything at all, but just showing what the statistics are and how we need to be more proactive in helping ourselves to change the paradigm. For every 100 men who are promoted into a managerial position, only 79 women are promoted into those roles. As we look at the pipeline, so let's look at entry level and where women are in numbers and the ratios, and as we move up the corporate pipeline, what the representation of women looks like. And you'll see the lighter colors on each side are women of color or men of color. And the orange women and the blue are men. And so as you move up from entry level, where women are very strongly represented at those levels, as you move up, we're not moving up into the C-suite. If you're a woman of color, your odds for achieving that are even more challenging. Not only affects your career, but because of these statistics, it also influences your income potential. And not only your income potential for what you make right now, this year, next year, and 2 years from now, but over the course of your lifetime, it adds up, right? Those disparities. So balancing and providing more opportunities as leaders, making sure that we have a culture of equity, but also we as women are also helping to change the game, changing this paradigm by the way we manage our careers. So how do you feel about your current workplace and your opportunities more specifically? So almost 90% strongly agree that you are encouraged that you can reach your professional goals here in this organization. So that is quite encouraging. And we can help each other achieve that as well. The other thing I want women also to think about oftentimes is sometimes we're very competitive with ourselves. And we believe that when we see the pipeline looking as it did on the previous slide, where there are not a lot of opportunities today for women as you move up, that we're competing for those few positions that are available today. But what we want to do is broaden the pie. We have the opportunity to make the pie bigger. So what can we do within our careers, within our work, as we support each other to grow the number of opportunities that women have along the corporate pipeline? How do you increase your odds of success then to making that paradigm shift and managing your career in particular on your own? Your Fuel Forward Career Acceleration System, and what we're going to get into the strategies around today, and the Fuel Forward book gives you all the details around these principles that we're going to just touch on a little bit today. But really that is your toolkit for how you can manage through your career. Fuel Forward came about a lot because of what I experienced in my personal career in many instances. And then as I have been working with organizations over the past 10 years, external to my corporate career, what some of the needs were, the misperceptions were, and those questions that I get, well, I don't know what to do. And so this is the answer to a lot of those questions. In my personal career, I worked for Humana as I started out in the management intern program out of graduate school, then worked there for almost 10 years, and then moved over to GE Appliances, where I worked for almost 13 years in a variety of different roles. And a lot of my vision for myself and my career was to get into the executive level of working for GE, which I was able to accomplish with the help and the navigation and support of a lot of different people, but also with being taught a lot about some of these strategies that we're going to learn about today. I also realized that there were quite a few misperceptions about the way I learned things. And of course, over time, things change, don't they? And they evolve, and the workplace evolves. And so I went out to explore how were those things changing, and then therefore, how do the way we navigate our career, how should that change? And that is where the principles for Fuel Forward came from. And then from a variety of interviews and surveys that I have done in working with some of the professionals as I prepared for the book. As you begin using the career navigation strategies and this Fuel Forward system, one of the first things you have got to understand and realize is really, what are the rules of the game that we're playing by? So much like we started this conversation as we started out this afternoon, thinking about the games that are played and how we play by the different rules, sometimes the rules are not necessarily as obvious as in the Game Night movie. And we often are not necessarily told what those are. They're just not common things that we talk about. Really how things work. But I want to stop and take a minute to explore this for just a minute. When you think about career advancement or talent advancement here at ARGI Financial Services, how do things work? There are a set of formal practices that are some of our standard HR practices, so your performance reviews, different things like that, and so you can think about what some of those are. But there are also informal practices that occur. And so I want you to think about what some of those things are and share those. What do you think? What are some of the informal and formal talent advancement practices here at ARGI? How does talent advancement work here?
Part of it that's a little informal is we expect our senior people, especially advisors and accountants, to mentor other people.
Okay.
But it's not really a formal program, and so you almost have to understand that if you're wanting to be mentored, that you might have to be a little more proactive in finding a mentor and not expect that some programs
Right.
are going to assign you a mentor and that person's going to help you along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes there are some formal programs. Most of the time there aren't. So we do that independently. Okay, so mentoring is sort of an informal approach to that. What else? What are some of the informal and formal practices around career advancement or talent advancement here? What do you all do? I'm sorry? Okay. Okay, yeah, so filling a need that may have been really undefined previously. Okay, great.
That could kind of tie into probably frustrations that people have in this specific area, because I think in certain roles at RG, it's very clear what is needed for advancement, and which would be the formal part, and then others informal. And I think, like but not every role here has that. And so I think sometimes informal advancement looks completely different for every person, and you might not even know that it was informal advancement until you're looking back on it. But I do think that is one of the things that's tough to figure out if you're not in one of those positions that has like step by step on how you get to the next level.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Excellent. Good. Thanks for sharing that. What else?
I would say almost similar to like product placement, familiar with that concept. You have to make sure that you're kind of in the right place at the right time so the right people see you doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's
But
right.
part
That's
of it.
exactly how grocery stores work. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All those things you buy right at the front when you're like, oh yeah, or those things that look so good, right? Yeah, they're in the right place at the right time. All right. Yeah, absolutely. What else? What are some of the other ways that things work?
I mean, it's difficult. We're divided up into a lot of small teams, a lot of which will kind of do the same things, and then others are different departments or different roles. But when you're on those teams, you're kind of at the mercy of the leaders of those teams, because you could end up on a team that has a great mentor, and you can end up on a team that has someone leading it who's not interested in mentoring at all. And so I think that really ties back into where you were talking earlier about giving away the control of your career, because it makes it more important than ever to product place yourself.
Yeah.
To make your desires known for your career.
Yes.
What you want to do. Yeah.
Like bigger product.
Right, like that.
Yeah, it makes it more important than ever to make sure you aren't just relying on
Yeah.
your specific team to get you where you want to be.
Yeah, good. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I think another informal step is asking for it. So I think men are more prone to step up and say, this is what I need, versus women will sit back and wait for a formal process.
Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Good. Anything else you want to add to that? Okay.
Don't be afraid to step outside the organization and find mentors.
Yeah, right.
You can
Mentors
get
outside the
somebody
organization.
subjective
Mhm.
or objective than someone
Yeah.
that can
And
provide you with career guidance.
right. And have a very different perspective than everybody who's in the same company. And sometimes where we work, and we are at work so long, we're with the same people, we become so insular to that community that we work with. So going outside is a great approach and can help to influence how your career navigates, for sure. Good. So these are things that we don't often think about or don't often talk about. And even understanding what some of the formal practices are. When I worked for GE has a formal process called Session C, where talent is discussed at the team level, and then the talent that is bubbling up is talked about at successive levels until at your business unit level, talent is reviewed, your top talent is reviewed, your high potential talent, that is. And then the CEO of the GE Corporation, the overall company, would come to each business unit to review. And that gave them a picture of, across all of the GE businesses, what was the top talent. And so we spent some time learning about that and being part of the Women's Network, being part of the African American Forum. We had a lot of conversations like that so that we could understand how to navigate those things, how those rules really worked, how the processes, if you will, really worked. So understanding that is critically important for you. Once you understand how talent advancement works both formally and informally in your organization, then your Fuel Forward career accelerators and the foundation that we'll talk about here momentarily are the key to helping you to navigate all that. That's what it is that I need to do along the course of my career. And we'll get into each of these momentarily, but there is a foundation on which your career is built, and that's all the execution that is getting your job done day to day. That is the keeping your head down part and doing a great job around that. And then there's expertise and experiences that are also part of that we'll talk about in a minute. All right. So let's get more into this solid foundation for your career. And I want to read a quote actually about this whole career navigation and managing this. And one of the people that I interviewed for Fuel Forward is Ralph Deschabert. He is the Chief Diversity Officer for Brown-Forman. And on page 38 is a quote from Ralph, and he said, "You have to be managing the environment in order to get opportunities for increased visibility. So you can be doing your job, head down, doing a wonderful job, but if you're really going to move up, either within the function or within the organization as a whole, you have to be seen as someone who the person above you and the person above them says, this person is really pretty good. We've seen him doing certain things and we feel good about him. Therefore, we think we should be advocating for him." So you've got to manage the environment to get people in the talent reviews to have positive discussions about you. And a lot of that begins with some of the things that we talked about, knowing how things work, your foundation of doing a great job each and every day in your work, and then using those accelerators to help you to move forward. So what happens when we build a home and it's not on a solid foundation? Yeah, it's not going to stand very well. Right. Yeah. So, and we've seen a lot of these unfortunate sinkholes here in recent years. It's like, where is all that coming from? And I don't know, maybe we're just hearing more about it in the news now. But yeah, you have to have a solid foundation just simply to build a home on. And when you do that, then you've got something steady that's going to hold for a long period of time that you can count on. The same thing for our career. So going back to that foundation of execution, that is built around three key variables. It is the expertise. So what is the educational foundation that I come to work with? What is the continued professional development that I do, like you're being here today, that helps me to continue to build both my technical skill and my professional development, my professional skills for how I engage with people in the workplace. Okay. And then your experiences. How am I navigating my career moves so that I am getting what I need along the way to be prepared, one, to execute at my current role, and you always want to be focused on doing the best job possible at your current role, not so focused on what I'm going to do next, because that will bite you. But what are the ways I need to navigate, the steps I need to make, the positions that I need to have along the course of my career so that I am prepared to do a great job in each successive role and be prepared to move forward. So those experiences, and then am I executing above minimal levels of expectations for my career and for my particular role? Let's look at an example. Do we have any track runners in here? Anybody run track? Okay. All right, but I know we have a swimmer in the room, a collegiate swimmer in the room. Lindsay. Lindsay, I'll let you in on a little secret. Lindsay reminded me that she was in my class at U of L a few years ago. I teach project management in the College of Business, and so she was a student. And I use her project actually as a best practice example for my students who are doing their projects. Absolutely. Yeah. And it was swimming related. So maybe she did some swimming relays as well. But you like to watch the Olympics. Yeah, and it's so exciting. And I love to watch the running. And so in the relay races, it's really important for each individual to do their part, right? So talk to me about what it takes to be successful in a relay race, running a relay race in the Olympics. What does it take to be successful in that? Pardon? Okay, you got to pass the baton, right, flawlessly. Okay, what else? Coordination. Endurance. Absolutely. Hours of practice. Yeah, both on your own as well as with your team, right? What else? Pardon? Okay. Yeah, all right, yeah, but being very attentive to the details. 'Cause there is a lot going on, right? And a lot that you have to be attentive to. And we are part of a team, and we make sure that we do our part. Each person has to run their own heat, and they have to run it well to contribute to the whole of the team. So we don't work in isolation. As we think about our own execution, what it takes for us to be successful is, one, to make sure that we're doing our part and doing our job, but also to think about the collective effort that we are contributing to and what that means, and to do that well, and to work collaboratively with our teammates to make that happen. So critically important for us to do that. What did you say about some of the areas around execution in your role? Having clarity of purpose about your job and how your role contributes to your team's goals. So pretty good there, 84%, just over that, strongly agree to that statement. So that's good, and that's really important for us to be able to do our work. And we see that there's some frustration around that, so there's still some opportunity for improvement. And we who are leaders, people leaders, know that we set the stage for our team, but we as individuals also have a responsibility for asking the question and not just being spoon-fed that information. Another question was, do you have clarity about the performance level expectations of your role? So nearly 74%, so not quite as many agree or strongly agree to that statement. Now again, are we as leaders providing clarity, as we as individual contributors asking the question so that we make sure that we understand what is expected of us and we can meet and exceed that mark? My job performance is consistently above the basic performance level expectations. So, as we understand what those basic performance level expectations are we executing that on a day-to-day level? So nearly 95% agree or strongly agree with that statement. So that's excellent. And have you defined measurable goals and success outcomes? So only just over 59% of you have clearly defined measurable goals and success outcomes. So we have some opportunity there. So if we're going to be seen as strong talent who is doing a great job of execution, there are a few things that we need to shore up here, making sure that we take the understanding of our role and it's important to the organization, and so that people can also objectively evaluate our work. So do we have some objective measures that people can say, yeah, meeting that, exceeding that, doing an absolutely great job at that? Okay, we have a lot of responsibility for making sure that we have that defined. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
We all think we're doing really well, but none of us know we haven't measured success.
Well, so, I ask you, to think about that carefully, internally. Sometimes when people respond, there's a little confirmation bias, too, when we answer. But oftentimes, we do feel like we're doing a good job, but sometimes our work is not objectively measurable in terms of what has been defined and laid out for us. So we can even be getting great feedback about that. But, when it comes down to specifics and being considered for the next role, whether that be lateral, whether that be a move up, whatever direction your career takes you, having something that people can objectively agree to is much stronger for you. And we're not all in roles where there are sales numbers, right, or financial numbers that we all achieve. But in your way, with your manager, work on defining what are the measurables. Now, how can we say most objectively that I'm knocking the ball out of the park, and know what that mark is so that I can exceed it each and every day? Okay. A great question. Great observation. Good. All right, so let's think a little bit about this question. What does career advancing star performance mean inside your company? You have a spot to add that on page 2. And I want to point out to you as you look at page 2, and you also find this on pages 51 to 54 of the Fuel Forward book, are high performance standards of execution. So in my research, looking at how do people evaluate you around execution? Now, generally speaking, and there'll be some very specific areas for your role, but commonly, the types of things that came up were, are you a problem solver? Are you accountable? Do you consistently exceed expectations? Are you someone who says, yeah, I can count on this person to get things done? And then especially for your business, are you customer focused, where relationships and the service level is extremely important? So take a look at that particular section of Chapter 5 to understand more about the high performance standards. And you can come back to the Consider This box on page 70, which is this particular question we're going to work on answering here for a moment. But you can come back to that question and even spend some more time on it, thinking about it and thinking more specifically about the competencies and skills. So what would you say? What does career advancing star performance mean here? What are some of the important ways that that is evaluated, assessed, defined? What else?
I think there's a lot of, we talk a lot about sales and ROI and things like that, but this company is unique in that leadership is a critical part of how all of us are reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Service leadership is definitely where these competencies
Okay, excellent.
I think to add to that, I like the thought of we have leaders who have a heart of service.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that heart of service. Mm-hmm. Good. Right, so it's beyond what my responsibilities are in my individual role, and what are the values that I embody that are important to the organization. Yeah, how else is STAR performance assessed? Great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. And
Somebody mentioned earlier, like fill a gap. So sometimes it's finding solutions for things that maybe haven't even been formally identified as a problem, or they've been identified and nobody else just moving on and decided to be proactive about it.
Good.
I think to add to that, like having an ownership mindset.
Great. Good. So an awesome list, and I'm sure there are some other things that we can add to that. But we often don't think outside of our job responsibilities so much, or think about how other people look at us more holistically, and think about our execution or what we bring to the table. So give that some more thought. You have a consider this question on page 70 in the book, again, where you can go back and reflect a little bit more on that. But our execution is table stakes for being able to be considered to move to another role, to advance, to be given opportunities to do different things, work on special projects, whatever it is, to lead with your Aspire organization. So know that star level of performance is required in order to be able to be considered to move ahead. However, career advancement requires focus beyond getting the job done. So we got to get the job done. We got to do it well. But if we want to move ahead, and again, as we think about our career and what we have set out for ourselves, what our personal goals are, that can be lateral move. It could be, we could be satisfied where we are, but want to be challenged with different things to do in our particular role. So even if we want to do that, we have to be able to use the accelerators that we're going to talk about next to afford these particular opportunities. The 3 accelerators are your reputation, your personal brand, it's what people think about you, your reach, and your relationships. And we're going to get into each of those. You have also available to you a number of downloads. We're going to give you handouts for these this afternoon, but you also can download the electronic version of that. I know for myself, when I'm working a lot of times on things, I like to type rather than write, or sometimes I need a little bit more space than a printed piece will afford me. So if you go to fuelforwardbook.com/resources, you can print out all of the resources that go along with that. We'll give you the handouts for these. So would you pass out, help me to get reputation sheets passed out to everyone. All right, your reputation. If you will go to page 75 in your book, and let's start out thinking about an example, a case example around reputation. Work with the 2 or 3 people around you as you can sort of collect yourselves here. And if you will read together and discuss the first 3 paragraphs, and we're answering this question: what happened to create Jennifer's perceptions about Kevin's reputation? So our reputation, what people think about us, the impressions that we set, the perceptions that people have about who we are and what our capabilities are. To your neighbor and say, interesting perspective. All right, excellent. Good. So what were some of your thoughts here about Kevin's dilemma? What created some of Jennifer's perceptions about his reputation? Yes, ma'am.
We thought maybe that there may have been a breakdown or like lack of communication at the beginning of the project. Maybe they didn't, both parties didn't do a very good job of setting expectations. And so Jennifer may have had expectations in her mind that weren't communicated to Kevin, and when he failed to live up to those,
Yeah.
that's that.
Okay.
Or maybe she has unrealistic expectations and is not a nice person.
Okay. All right. That could be. All right. So lack of clarity of expectations, or unrealistic expectations potentially on Jennifer's part.
Katie made the comment, she said, sounds like there wasn't a personal brand out there
Mhm.
either he hasn't done a great job of building his own brand, that he's either a great coworker in other areas. This is his one experience with her, and that's all she has to base it off of, basically.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So he hasn't done a good job of managing his brand. She doesn't know anything else about him. All right. What else? What else did you all talk about?
Well, contrary to that, what if his brand is so good that her expectations were higher than what he delivered in this one?
Okay. All right. So he might have an extraordinary brand, but he just didn't deliver up to par on this one.
Overbranded himself.
Oh, over-branded. Okay. more than he's living up to. All right. Okay. She's married. Her husband is a Kevin. All right. What else? Anything else you all talked about? Yes, ma'am.
Even if he had a brand or didn't have a brand, the fact that Jennifer's talking to Dave about it and not giving a lot of information is damaging what is in his brand.
Yeah. Okay.
And we talked
Dangerous.
about too, also her brand.
Yeah, her brand.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a negative Nancy.
Okay. All right, potentially. All right, so there are a number of different scenarios or possibilities and things that.
It's interesting that everybody's negative on Jennifer.
Uh-huh. Amen.
Maybe this wasn't.
We need more info.
Uh-huh. Okay. Right. So there are a lot of questions here, right? And there's a lot of potentially misinformation, lack of information, lack of communication, which can create a lot of situations like this around a person's reputation. Either of them, anybody in this scenario that we're talking about. So what does it take to manage your brand? Think about the brands that you buy and that you purchase, the ones that you are especially loyal to or those that are memorable in your mind. There are three things primarily that those brands want to try to do to make sure that you continue to purchase their products and services. One is they do what they can to stand out from the crowd. Their value proposition is such that they differentiate themselves. Secondly, they are well known. So being out there in marketing, and Denise can tell us, you got to be out there. It's your product positioning, right, that we talked about earlier. So being out there. And the perceived runway. So making sure that people believe and see and realize the potential value that their product and service can continue to serve them. That there is more to gain from the relationship or the purchase and the use of the products and services. Our reputations are exactly the same way. We have to stand out from the crowd. So what is it that is unique for you? How do you differentiate yourself? What is the value that you bring? Do you know yourself? Have you defined your value? Being well known. How well are you telling your story? So someone mentioned that Kevin probably didn't provide a lot of information, hadn't been sharing what it is he was doing at all. Someone up there earlier on some of the career frustrations mentioned the fact that sometimes it seems like you may be bragging when you talk about yourself. But nonetheless, we have to find a way to tell our story. It's critically important. And then perceived runway. What is the future potential and capability that others see in you? And how are we demonstrating and communicating that? A lot of that comes from our execution and going above and beyond in what we do. And how else are we showing that and showing what our capabilities are? So much like we do with our brands and expect from our brands that we buy, we have to do the same for our personal brand. So let's look at a couple of these a little bit more deeply. As you stand out from the crowd, there are a couple of things that are really important for you. One is your what and your how. So it's not just the work that we do, but it's also how we do it and how we engage with other people. Kroger and their mantra, and one of their critical values that they have for their employees is how we work together is as important as what gets done. It's the what and the how. With some of what you say about your services and the relationships that you build with your clients in ARGI, Clients always know where we stand beside them. We improve lives and the relationships that we build with people. There's a quote on page 82, between pages 82 and 83. Melanie Shook, at this particular time, was the Vice President of Customer Experience for Newstar, which is a technology company. And she said that what leaders look for falls into two primary areas. One is, what are your core capabilities? What can you do? So that's all the functional skills, the contributions, tangibles, if you will. That's where we focus a lot. The other place that I put 50% focus on, and I've seen our company shift to that direction, is how you go about getting the results. So first part, all about the results. Performance, execution, all those tangibles. Second piece is what I call your value system, or the success factors. Looking at how you go about getting results. Do you leave dead bodies along the way, but you get results? Or do you actually make things better as you get results? So I look at the how and the what. Then if you're a people leader, I have one more dimension. The leadership talent that you bring to the table. How are you fostering an environment in which others can perform and grow? Are you leading that? Are you making others better within your organization? So your what and your how becomes critically important. Also, as you think about your what and your how, going back to those high standards of performance that we talked about earlier, as we talked about execution, those 5 standards are critically important here, and they come to play. On page 89 of your book, in the Consider This box, you can rate yourself on somehow emotional intelligence variables, some characteristics around emotional intelligence to help you to evaluate and assess your how. Being well known, getting out of our comfort zone sometimes and speaking up about who we are, what it is we're doing, what we're contributing in the organization, in our day-to-day work with our teams. And Tammy from Brown Forman said that she learned that you can't be so humble. So you don't have to be braggadocious and be cocky about it, but we can't be so humble about our work and our contributions that we're just quiet about it. It's not bragging, but self-promoting. Again, telling our story. Because if we don't tell our own story, somebody else is going to tell our story for us. And in the book, there's a quote by Ralph Deshabert who talks about that very thing. You know, we have to own our own story. If we don't, somebody's going to tell a story that we don't necessarily want to be told, which is a lot of the situation that Kevin was in that particular scenario. Somebody else was telling his story. If you flag the Consider This box on page 105 as well, you can come back a little bit later and answer the questions in the Consider This box at the top of page 105. Do your actions and words support what you want your brand positioning to represent? So you've got to make some decisions about, what do I want my brand to be? What do I want people to think about me? And is what we're doing every day congruent with that? So that people can trust and have faith in who you are and what your capabilities are. What were some of the things that you talked about in this section of the career practices assessment? So do you know your water cooler reputation, your behind the scenes reputation? So very important for you to know, what are the perceptions that people do have of me? And 63% of you strongly agree or agree to that, with much fewer strongly agreeing in this case compared to some of the other questions that we've seen. My water cooler reputation and my personal brand goals closely align. And I think a lot of this goes back to the fact that you probably don't know what your water cooler image is. And so you are not sure what the alignment might be to what you intend for your brand positioning to be. So getting information about what your water cooler image is. What are some of the ways that you can get some insight as to what other people think about me? What's my reputation? Okay. Facebook Workplace, okay.
Sounds like a bad idea.
All right. There are a variety of ways we can get to that information.
You do have to have people though who you can ask that question and trust
Yeah.
that they're going to be honest with you. And it
Mhm.
has to be people that you care about their opinion, obviously.
Yes. Mhm.
That's hard to do.
You can also ask somebody who you trust to basically do an anonymous survey or come up with like a 360 evaluation. So that person's collecting whether they know or not, and just kind of gives you the summary
Mhm.
of it.
Yeah, and an informal 360. Yeah, and a mentor is a great resource for that as well. You know, a great resource for that because they can ask their peers. A mentor who may be at a higher level than you can get some trusted insight from their peers on what your reputation is. I actively work on building my desired personal brand. Just nearly 61% of you are really proactively working on getting that brand image, that perception that you really want people to have of you. Do you have a mentor? So only 18% strongly agree there. So a lot of opportunity for that trusted person who can both guide us, and that's why we see a lot of our frustrations in our career around needing that mentor and wanting that. Your opportunity to, yes ma'am.
I have another question. So, um, in your words, like your relationship with the manager that you work with directly in your department, who actually sees the work you do day to day, and then you have probably somebody from the outside this firm or somebody who's in a different department. You're going to get two very different perspectives, I feel like, on stuff like that, on the drug work. So, should you have, well, I guess the answer is yes, you probably need one of both to kind of get an idea. Because the people who are not working on the work directly with you may not give you some feedback that's really important for you to
Mhm.
really do your job to the best of your ability.
Yeah, and so there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity to work with your direct manager in a coaching relationship. So for those of you who are leaders, can give feedback like that to the team members who work with you so that they are getting consistent, honest, and open and constructive feedback. And then, yes, people who are outside, people who are internal, that know a little bit more about your work, your direct work. Having an objective and knowing what it is that you want from a mentoring relationship. What is it that I need help with, guidance on, insight on? Sometimes it's information about, maybe how to navigate your career internally, or it's something in particular about your role or the career path that you would like to take. Or it's a technical skill or something that you would like to learn. So who is best positioned to help provide value with what you most need at a given point in time? So you may have a number of mentors over the course of your career, you absolutely will, and use them in a time span that is most useful. Also, consider, what can I give back in my mentoring relationship? I have something of value to offer. What is it that I can share with the mentor that I'm working with? There is a mentoring guide that is part of your downloads as your resources, but if you also want to go directly to the mentoring guide and download that, you can go to that particular link, tinyurl.com/V dash mentoring guide, with the M and the G that are also capital. But if you go to that link, you can download the mentoring guide. And what it includes for you, it talks about your mentoring relationship. So it's a multiple page document that talks about the 4 stages of a mentoring relationship: selecting the right mentor, engaging the right mentor, progressing in your relationship, and closing a mentoring relationship, which is critically important. Sometimes people just sort of let them go away or fall off, or we just stop meeting, or whatever. But what kind of impression does that send? So you've got to be very particular about how you sunset a mentoring relationship. So as a mentee, and you own the mentoring relationship as a mentee. It's your deal. So this will help to guide you through that. Okay, provide some guidance in that regard. Okay? So another resource for you. Now I want you to take just a moment to think about your reputation. On your worksheet, but also in your handout, you've got a spot to answer this question. Later on, come back and work through the breadth of this reputation strategy planning worksheet, which has a number of other questions and thought prompts for you to work on. What do I want my reputation to be, and how do I go about managing that? Okay? And then there's a lot of other information in that particular chapter in the Fuel Forward book to give you some more tools and guidance around that. Right now, write down a couple of key words that express when someone thinks about you, when your name is called or they see you coming down the hall, what 2 or 3 key words do you want to come to mind? What impression do you want people to have when they hear your name, think about you? The next accelerator in your toolkit is reach. Reach comes from the advertising term that represents a brand message. It's broadcast over a given medium, advertising medium, to a given target audience. And so we as professionals have to think about our reach. How are we ensuring that we are reaching other people? Who is it strategic for us to connect with? Who needs to know about who we are and what our capabilities are? Needs to see our work, to be able to understand what our potential runway is, who we need to influence about our reputation. So we have to be proactive in thinking about our reach. Another quote, a couple of quotes I want to share with you are on pages 118 and 119 in the Fuel Forward book. This is another Ralph quote. He said, two conversations go on in these meetings, these closed-door discussions that leaders have about talent. There's one conversation about people's performance, that they did X, Y, and Z, and are courageous, collaborative, and more. Another conversation relates to the relationships I have with each of those people. How I interpret a person's performance is often very subjective, and the subjectivity is colored by my experiences. Therefore, you want to give people a different set of experiences with you. In doing so, they get comfortable and can advocate on your behalf. So we utilize reach as a way to do that, as a way to help people to have different experiences with us. So let's dig into reach a little bit. There are 3 types of reach: involuntary, intentional, and invited. Involuntary is thinking about the fact that we're always on. No matter where you are, you might just be walking down the hall, but somebody, and it's not intentional, it's just you are visible. Somebody is looking at you when you don't even know it, or when you at least expect it. When I was growing up, oftentimes, I was the baby. I'm the baby of 7 children, and so I know my sisters and brother would say that I'm spoiled. I won't admit to that, but when I used to go to the store with my mom and I would want something, you probably did this too, just whining, right, about what it is you want, and the answer would be an emphatic no, but you would keep going. I would keep going, and she would say to me, "People are looking at you." And of course I didn't care at that point in time because I was young and I just wanted what I wanted, but it was definitely embarrassing for her, but it did matter. And so we as professionals, it matters. We are always on. So be careful about your involuntary reach, how you just show up or hang out, or when you're in a meeting and somebody else is talking. Everybody's always paying attention to the person who's speaking. So, what perception are you portraying at that particular point in time? And then there's intentional reach, and that is how we are intentional about how we show up and how we reach out to make connections. So where do you sit in the meeting? Do you speak up at all? Who are you reaching out to, connecting to, both just in our work, our day-to-day work, or to build relationships with? And then based on the things that we're doing around our brand, managing our brand, and our involuntary and our intentional reach, we earn invited reach. And that is where we are invited to those opportunities. It's those sponsors or those advocates who advocate on our behalf, open the door for additional opportunities for us to be on the special project team, to be considered for a position, to lead the Aspire employee resource group. Things like that become potential opportunities based on that invited reach. So let's look at intentional reach for a moment. What are things that we could do to build an intentional reach? Here are a few general ideas, and then I want you to think a minute about how you can make that specific to your work here at ARGI. So your daily interactions with others that I mentioned, how you engage with meetings, speaking up or not speaking up. Volunteer to make the presentation. Sometimes we don't want to be in front of people. We're afraid to be the presenter, afraid of people's opinions. But if we are very well prepared, preparing for intentional reach is another thing that we have to do. Volunteer roles and activities. So all of the volunteer opportunities that are coming up. Volunteer to lead some of that, or to take a significant role on the planning team on that. And community service, take on a leadership role. Is there something on your team that you can do, a special project that you can volunteer for that needs a leader? Making those connections with people, engaging a mentor to guide you on other ideas for intentional reach and how you might do that in this particular culture or environment. As you think about some specifics, so beyond what your opportunity is with the Aspire community service work that's coming up, what are some other ways, very specific things that you might do around intentional reach?
Be a mentor.
Pardon?
Be a mentor.
Okay, be the mentor. Okay. Yeah, and reach out proactively to someone who could use a little bit of guidance. Or has expressed that they're looking for a mentor in ways that you could help.
I think getting to know people and get to know
Mm-hmm.
deeper than a surface level of relationship is important.
Yeah. And how can you do that? How can you get to know someone? What a way.
Time together.
Yeah. Invite somebody to lunch.
Asking them about their life.
Sometimes the small talk and finding things that you have in common. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, again, we get so busy and we're just moving from one thing to the next. Taking a minute or two to get to know someone can go a long way. Good. Let's look at some of the things that you said around reach. I do a good job of making my manager and key stakeholders aware of important contributions and accomplishments. So this is related to both how we manage our reputation, and being proactive in our brand management and our brand marketing, and how we reach out to people. So almost 71% of you strongly agree that you are doing a good job of making people aware of your contributions. So a little more opportunity there among many of us, and not as many strongly agree. So we've got a lot of agree here. I volunteer for special assignments and committees and leadership roles outside of my day-to-day responsibilities. So 79% here. Again, a lot fewer who strongly agree, but strong agree. A good chunk of us agree with that. So some opportunity there. Take a minute. On the bottom of page, or the middle of page 3 on this handout, we talked about a couple of things, but are there some Specific ways you can expand your reach. List intentional reach opportunities that you could take advantage of. And are there some steps that you can take to make it happen? So take a minute to do that, and we'll pass out to you the reach strategy planning worksheet that will give you an opportunity to personally go deeper, our relationships, and how we turn a lot of the connections that we're making using reach strategies really into stronger relationships. And so let's look at what these relationships are. There are 4 types of relationships. Our acquaintances, and acquaintances are, like many of you I have met today, we've worked together just a little bit, now I'm acquainted with you. You work sometimes with coworkers, maybe just sporadically here and there, but not a lot. You don't know each other well. So, those are also acquaintances. When you go to networking events too, sometimes, outside of the company, those will be people who are acquaintances in your network. Great starting point. Great to have acquaintances. We need to build those. The second type of relationship is allies. And those are people who help us to get work done. There are people, we have each other's back. They're more like friends or closer colleagues that we have at work. You don't have to be terribly, deeply friends where we're sharing a lot of information, personal information, know each other's family, hang out together, though sometimes we do. But, allies, again, people who know us a little bit more, we work a little bit more closely with, we tend to help each other out a little bit more. And know that when we are looking at ally relationships and building those ally relationships, and we're being more strategic about that, we are looking at not only what I can get from these relationships, but also what can I give? How can I contribute? Can I contribute value to the relationship? Advocates, those are those sponsors, people who will speak up on our behalf. But they got to know something about us in order to do that. And we have to tell our own story, or they'll become like Kevin in his situation with Jennifer, who other people or wherever were getting her perceptions about Kevin, who he is, what he can do, what his potential runway may be in the future, or lack thereof. Adversaries. We don't like to think about it, but not everybody is our fan. All of us will have, at some point in time, maybe an adversary here or there. We don't like to think about those relationships, but we also always have to manage those relationships. You've heard the saying, keep your friends closer, your enemies close, your friends close, your enemies closer. And there's some truth to that. Just to know the information, because there may be information that is being shared out there about you that you are not privy to, you don't know about, that maybe some of your adversaries are sharing. So that's why your water cooler reputation is important to keep up with what that is. Let's look at some advice, some guidance around these relationships. I spoke for a Women in Technology conference and interviewed some leaders in the technology industry, some women who had advanced their careers into leadership roles in technology. And so Dawn shared some of this advice about relationships. She said, be wise in building your base of connections. You got to be proactive in reaching out to people. Find the influencers. What do they have to say? Make sense of that. Stay in touch with them. Your contacts are your future. In fact, to that point, I was just talking to my nephew who was saying that very thing. He said, really, it's been my network that have given me the opportunities and where I am today. So it works that way for all of us. Keeping up with people you think are experts in the field, very critical. Once a year or more often, email. Some people who are still sort of those acquaintances we don't tend to keep in touch with as much, if at all. But, what's a piece of value that we can share with that individual that is an article that we read that we thought was interesting? A piece of news, new information about us, or something that we saw that was good news about them that we want to congratulate them on. Taking the time to congratulate people on LinkedIn. We know when their anniversaries are, and all of that. Those are good opportunities to stay in touch. So don't stay behind your computer. You got to get out and be proactive in reaching out to people. So what were some of the things that you said in your responses to the career practices assessment? I proactively reach broadly to engage a diverse array of individuals in my network. So almost 74% of you strongly agree or agree with that. Fewer strongly agree, so there's still some opportunity there. Many of us, almost 40% were neutral on that. So not really working on that as proactively as you need to. I know who my allies are, and I'm intentional about being a resource to them in return. So 74% of you strongly agree on that. So pretty good there. All right, still some opportunity. So really being proactive in reaching out. And I want to talk about sponsors here for just a minute. And how do you earn a sponsor? How do you get a sponsor? So there are two schools of thought. In my interviews with the professionals that I talked with on the Fuel Forward book, I got a couple of different perspectives. One is that sponsors are earned based on what we're doing around managing our brand, making ourselves visible, using our reach, making sure people know what it is we want to do, what we're interested in our career. If I don't know how to help you, and I don't know how to advocate on your behalf. So some of the story that we tell is, what are our interests? So making sure that we have those interactions, being very intentional about our intentional reach so that we earn a lot of that invited reach. Then there is asking someone, advocating for ourselves, and ask someone to be a sponsor for us. There may be instances where you're going for a particular job, so timing is of the essence, and you need someone to speak up for you. Or want to be selected or be considered for that project leader position or a particular role on the project team. So you may need someone to advocate on your behalf. Be careful when you ask someone to be a sponsor, because you want to make sure it's someone who, if they had the opportunity to do the invited reach, or where you've earned that relationship, you've earned that opportunity for them to advocate on your behalf, that they would be willing to do so even if you didn't ask. So they've got to know something about you and what you're capable of, and trust that you've got the runway and that you're going to do a great job for them if they speak out for you. They're putting their neck on the line. You use Net Promoter Score in your customer experience surveys. How likely are you to recommend ARGI to a client, you would say, to their network? And so much is the same for us. We are asking someone to put themselves on the line when they speak up on our behalf. So we've got to earn the right, earn the privilege for that.
So as a sponsor, then it's not really necessarily just somebody who's advocating for you across the board so much as it needs to be a little more focused on what result are you trying to get?
Oftentimes, and especially if you ask, you want to be specific, because if you want me to speak up on your behalf, need to know what that is. Generally speaking, as opportunities come up, as people are talking about talent, sometimes those are informal conversations about people. I mean, what do you know about, it's that involuntary reach when somebody is walking down the hall and people may be in a meeting and talking about, oh, hey, what do you know about this person? And so it's what people may say informally or formally when asked, as well.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make it less authentic if you're asking if you're asking someone to be your sponsor versus if you just prove yourself to have a sponsor, I guess?
So regardless, you have to do the work to earn the right to even ask or to be sponsored without asking. So you're in the same boat, regardless. So you've got to be doing a great job. They've got to know something about you. They've got to know what your interests are. They have had to have opportunities to observe you. And so not just hear about what it is your work is and what you're capable of, but also to visibly see that for themselves. And sometimes that's where these additional volunteer opportunities outside of our day-to-day job responsibilities gives us exposure to people who might not normally see our work so that they can advocate for us and they know something about us. And that happens over time. It doesn't happen quickly, it happens over time. Only 58% of you feel like you have a sponsor in the company, somebody who's willing to advocate for you. We don't always know that we have a sponsor. When we have that invited reach, a sponsor, when we haven't particularly asked, but somebody who has seen us, seen our work, and they believe in us, may advocate for us, and we don't even know it. We may never know it. Look at the bottom of page 3 on your handout here. As we think about your relationships, rate your relationship effort. So think about the professional relationships you have right now. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 on the following statements, with 1 for disagree and 5 for agree. So go through that list of just those 4 short questions, and which is also on page 159 in the book. And how would you rate your relationship effort? We really have just gotten an introduction to the Fuel Forward Career Acceleration System and some of the strategies that you have. There's much more as you get into the book, as you use the resources. There's so much more for you to take advantage of. But remember, you have your foundation of execution, so continue to make sure that you are building your expertise. You're developing your technical skills, your professional skills are important to that. Your decisions that you make around your career path that give you the experiences that you need to do a great job of execution where you are and to prepare you for the roles ahead. Then your accelerators, your reputation and being mindful about what you want your brand to represent and how you portray that, making sure that there's congruence and alignment to that and being aware of what your reputation is and making some decisions around how you're going to demonstrate your brand. Your reach, being very intentional about how we reach out to people and make connections and how visible we are, the capabilities that we have, that we're demonstrating that and showing what we're capable of in our career. And then the relationships, being very strategic about our relationships. And who do we need as allies? What acquaintances can we turn into allies? Who might be our advocates? Who needs a little bit more exposure to who I am and what I do? Where can I add value back in a relationship? How do I proactively manage those relationships? That gives you the fuel that you need to be able to advance in your career. Now, as we finish up, a couple of quick things. I want you to think about your actions. What have you most taken from this that you can begin to apply immediately? If you can implement one strategy in the next 14 days, what would give you the greatest impact right now toward achieving your vision? And what Fuel Forward accelerator would most help accelerate your progress toward that vision? You have space for that on the back of page 4 to make a couple of notes. Our time together today and your reflection on these questions really are your starting point. You're going to have the opportunity to work together in mentoring groups and there will be more information coming out on that a little bit later. But I just want to speak to how you can use some of the tools that you've received here today and maybe work together to help each other really work on managing. How can I best manage my career? How can I use this information? How can I use these strategies and tools and resources to really help me to think about what it is I want to do, what's important to me in my life and in my career, and what I want to achieve and the value I want to add and give back. Going back to that question of our mindset earlier, as we think about our life and we think about our career and we think about our work and how our work fits into our life and what we want to most accomplish in our lives. So use your mentoring groups that you're going to be getting some information on who you're going to be working with. So use that as a sisterhood, as partners in making progress, and progress as you define it. So that's why it's really, really important for you to be able to personalize and think, take a little bit of time to think about what's most important for you. So you want to define and share your personal areas of focus and one or two career goals that you would like to achieve. So based on your responses to the Fuel Forward Career Practices Assessment, to our discussion around the Fuel Forward strategies, the system, and the tools that we have today, what are some areas that you'd like to work on? Where is your area of focus? As you come together in these mentoring groups, share that. You'll find some synergies. You'll find that there are some different areas of focus and some opportunities for you to learn and work on some other areas in addition to what's important for you. As you support each other, you're going to support each other. You have tons of experiences yourselves. You can utilize that experience. Utilize your ideas to help and support each other, and that's what this is really all about. How are you going to work together? So what is going to be your rhythm of getting together? Are you going to do that in person? Some of you may be paired with people who are not in the local area, in different areas. So how are you going to come together? And how are you going to support each other? Define for yourself what you need from your sisters in these groups. How can they best help you? I, as an individual in your group, can't help you unless I really know what you need from me and how to best engage. You'll also want to share information about maybe communication styles, what your preferences are. Sometimes you may just want to touch base with each other, giving each other pats on the back, check-ins, sharing good news when something has happened, and being able to give each other feedback on different things. So how is that going to work, and how do you want that to work? How can you best support each other? What's your recurring meeting time so that you can make sure that you've got a good rhythm and that you keep up with making sure that you're getting together and supporting each other? Make your meetings a priority. I know sometimes with day-to-day work it's hard and we have things that come up, but make sure you let your peers know if something comes up and you're not going to be able to make that meeting. Maybe it will be best for you guys to reschedule. Don't just skip it and think, well, other people will be there. They've got it. So make it a priority. Be accountable to your peers for the support. And then prepare for and attend. I'm going to have a follow-up group coaching session with you all. I think we may still be working out the date and solidifying a date, but probably in the next 60 days, within the next 45 to 60 days, we'll get together again to just have a question and answer session. You'll have the opportunity to talk about your experiences working together and working on using the worksheets. So use these as resources. You might define, let's work on this particular question. Somebody wants to work on reach. We want to work on our intentional reach. Come with some ideas around how we might engage in intentional reach in our office. And so find areas where This is a key focus area. This is the way we can support each other. And then as you're doing that, other questions will come up as you try to work on implementing the strategies and tools that we've talked about. And just what some of your experiences have been, getting feedback on that, so that it will just be an opportunity for us to have a conversation and for you to get your questions answered. Okay? So be ready and look for more information on that. So you'll have more information coming out about the mentoring groups. You guys want to add anything at this point on that?
Yes, there will be a communication coming out very soon.
Good. So your mentoring guide can help you with that. So this is focused on the mentee primarily, but it talks about the mentoring process. And so this will also be helpful for you as you get together with your mentoring groups to think about how do we go through the process. But again, also just think about and talk about how can we support each other? What is it you're trying to accomplish? And what listening ear can we provide? Sometimes listening is what someone needs. Sometimes listen to their ideas, sometimes gathering ideas from others is also part of that process. Okay? So get into it, begin to explore, figure out how you can support each other. But you have a unique opportunity with Aspire to really build relationships, to build a support system, get to know each other. And so even outside of these initial mentoring groups, get to know some of your other sisters. Have that coffee with someone. Ask people to go to lunch. Have an informal conversation as you're going to fill up your water bottle, or getting coffee. Just 2 minutes to chit chat about what's going on, to build that sisterhood and to grow the opportunities for all of you here. There is a lot of pie for all of us to be able to eat. Let's grow the pie. Let's grow the pie. Any closing questions as we get ready to wrap up?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a soft skills training program here that we do, which is very well received. And one of the programs, it focuses on mentorship, and it was eye-opening for me because it told me that every mentor or mentee can fit in different types of mentors, just like you mentioned. And one of the ones I think that was the most interesting to me is the adversary and how that can become a mentor. Because if you don't surround yourself with someone who plays that challenger role, you're just surrounding yourself with cheerleaders.
Mm-hmm.
And a true mentor knows when to step in and challenge you in ways to push you. And so I think everybody's got to be cognizant of the types of people that they surround themselves with, or that they build mentor-mentee relationships with, to make sure you're getting that full gamut of feedback, because it's important to feel empowered and it's important to feel like you're being advocated for, but it's also very important to make sure that you're not just surrounding yourself with someone who's coming with the ego, you're also surrounding yourself by people that are challenging you.
Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I, in my mind, thought of a mentor as this all-encompassing one person, when indeed it could be 4 or 5 different people that play very different roles.
Yes, right. Because no one person can give you everything that you need. And you're going to need different things at different points in time. And even in your relationships with these mentoring groups, there'll be different people who bring different things to the group. And so use that strength in each other and as part of your group, and challenge each other as well. Yeah. Anything else? Couple of things that I'll ask you to turn in before you go. If you would gift me with your feedback and complete this card and leave it, as well as make sure that your form, your video release form, if you will make sure that you have completed that and leave that for me as well. You have been awesome to work with today. I am anxious for our upcoming coaching session so that I can hear more about what you've been up to, between now and then, and what questions you have, how I can continue to support you and provide guidance. And I look forward to that. And with that, I'll turn it back over and wish you the best. So thank you.